Silver is currently experiencing a great deal of upward pressure. As long as there is global unrest, the price of gold and silver will continue to rise. It wouldn't shock me if we hit 50 here within the next month or two. Tell me what you'd buy with $100 a month to invest in metals. The gold and silver you need can be purchased online at SD Bullion. Visit sdbullion.com/new to purchase gold or silver instantly. As you can see from the piece of gold in the case, the price of gold has reached a new all-time high today. Sure enough, I set a new record every single day, nearly $3,650. When you factor in the premium, the price of gold per ounce approaches $3,800. I think it could go much higher, but it does seem like a lot of money. The high cost is putting many individuals out of the market, though. Far more purchasing than selling is going on at the moment. With one notable exception, the buffalo and eagle on display are American gold pieces. Gold is no longer a marketable commodity. Absolutely not. I actually have a lot of questions, actually. Today, Harry, we will be filming yet another question video. Are you in need of answers? We have them. We have one here, and we're talking about world gold. Can you imagine melting a single ounce of reverse-proof Libertad gold? Number. Surely you could melt that. Since Adrian is a huge fan of those. If that dissolved, would it bother you? It is simply not going to occur. To be sure, I would be sad about it. Is the proof more appealing to you, or the reverse proof? Yes. The coin is stunning. It seems to be reverse proof, you know. Therefore, consider a proof, but with all the tables turned. Therefore, the fields will appear somewhat icy, and the device itself will have a sparkling appearance. Alright, let's continue with the gold motif. This brings us to our next point. According to him, he began to accumulate silver. Should I begin with gold after 500 ounces? It must align with your personal strategy. This is the type of question that can only be answered by the one asking. After all, how much is enough? When is enough enough? That has to be in line with your metals objectives, your budget, and your thinking about whether you need to run with it or have lots of place to store it. There are numerous aspects to consider. As a result, I always come prepared with at least 6 questions to ask in response to that issue before I can give an opinion. In my case, I will admit that prior to purchasing gold, I possessed approximately 400 ounces of silver. When you're young and have plenty of time to stack, I recommend getting a solid silver foundation. It really depends on the person, though, I suppose. Yes, and there are a plethora of entertaining approaches to discovering the answer. Looking at the present ratio and making your stack reflect it is one such approach. As an example, if the current ratio is 90:1, then you should purchase 1 ounce of gold for every 90 ounces of silver. A mere viewpoint, perhaps something entertaining. We have an additional inquiry concerning gold. Is it possible to recoup the premium while selling fractional gold, they ask? It's all about the time. Do not sell it the following day. It won't take long to break even or perhaps make a profit in this market due to the premiums. You can tell that there is a $45 premium on 1/10 ounce of gold by looking at this tray. The 1 ounce of gold, though, is another option. Looking at a bar will reveal a $50 premium. If you were to purchase 10 units of the 1/10 ounce, the cost would increase to $400. As a result, they are plainly a more expensive item. Would a penny be worth more than 1/4 of an ounce when I sell them? Indeed, that's right. However, if you can only buy a 1/10 ounce, the multiple becomes irrelevant as long as you have some gold in your stack. Alright, we have another gold-related question, but this time it's for Adrian. They ask, Adrian, how many units of gold and silver must I accumulate before I can afford to purchase a gold Rolex similar to yours? Yeah, it's pleasant. You have my gratitude. You shouldn't buy something if you can't justify buying it twice. That is, when it comes to an item that you are essentially buying for yourself, my advice is to simply create your stack. You should prioritize having an emergency reserve to pay your bills. The next step is to invest in precious metals like silver and gold, amounting to a reasonable portion of your income or savings, whichever you prefer. And if there's still money after that, treat yourself to a beautiful Rolex. I consider it more than just a timepiece. From the time I was a little kid, I kind of liked it. It has always been a desire of mine to own a watch because I find them attractive. Also, no matter how hard you work, it will always be there as a reminder to keep pushing yourself. In my opinion, that concludes it. There is no concrete solution to the question though. But when you're financially stable enough to know that you have a cushion for unexpected expenses and a nest egg for retirement, then by all means, treat yourself to that beautiful gold Rolex. It is a great principle that Adrian's dad instilled in him. You can buy it twice before you buy it. I wouldn't recommend getting into debt to buy a toy like that because it kind of fits in with my overall sentiment. Not only is it an elegant piece of jewelry, but it is also a lovely toy. However, you shouldn't incur debt for an ill-conceived purchase. Hold off on buying it until you have the cash on hand. By the way, while we're on the subject of Rolex, Harry happens to own a small Rolex watch that you might not be aware of. That was a present from Adrian, I must say. Is that right? Yeah. I'm not much of a watchman, and I'm not really enthusiastic about most things. However, I must confess that I've been rather captivated by that. It is just stunning. Having one has never been in my wildest dreams. And now I do, all because of Adrian. Guess what? Among all the men, Harry is the most worthy. You know, he's always looking out for other people. I mean, come on, he would never think to do that for himself. This is an exceptional present for an exceptional man, though. Moreover, behold the visitor who has just entered the room. Richard King. What's going on, man? Good morning. Hey, someone wanted to know if we could make a video with the important junk silver dates. Richard, would you mind if we quickly reviewed a few key points? The coins make a difference. In the Phillies system, there are 21 and 28 pieces worth $1. Your Morgan numbers are 93, 94, and 95. Perhaps a 99 Philadelphia Carson City. So you're thinking, ooh, since that could be one that the dealer passes by. Where do the dimes stand? There are 1921, 21D, and 16D Mercury dimes for you. The Roosevelt's vital dates are absent. You are 32 D and S in Washington quarters. Additionally, your 1920s P, D, and S will serve as your walkers. Sure enough, there isn't a P. Michael Mittmer. Yes, your Phillies, the Benjamins omit crucial dates. The Kennedys from 1964 too, of course. They were only produced in 64. How about the Liberty quarters and barbers that stand there? Those too aren't often encountered. On top of that, I got the impression that dealers will prioritize such over better dates, the semi-keys included. However, just because a 1916 standing Liberty quarter isn't a certain find doesn't imply they won't be. Well done. In 1916, it is the kind one indeed. Household Services 96S, 01S, 13S. Those are absolutely mine. Holy cow, I tracked them down. A 96S was located. Holy cow. Consequently, there are a few scores available. Finding the important dates when sorting through junk silver is likely to be a challenge for the majority of people, particularly because, well, it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. At other times, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack and coming up empty. Just think about it the next time. All right, I have a question for you. They want to know your prediction for silver prices in the next decade. Also, would you recommend buying silver bars by the ounce or by the 10 ounce? The pricing per ounce is the same for both rounds and bars, at least here at our store. At our store, we price them similarly to generics, so it doesn't matter if it's a 1 ounce, 10 ounce, or 5 ounce container. At 100 ounces and kilograms, we begin to receive price reductions. So, is it really the same price to purchase one 10 ounce silver bar as it is to purchase 10 1 ounce silver bars? It is here indeed. If you wanted additional options when selling your silver, wouldn't it be better to just buy 10 1 ounce bars? Imagine if you only had to do one at a time. Possibly yes. You know, it all comes back to what I mentioned earlier. Remembering why you're purchasing them initially is important. The smaller increments would definitely be the better choice if you were considering using the silver for bartering. Where do you think it will be in 10 years? That's my first inquiry, much higher than it is right now. However, I am utterly confused beyond that. I have a question for you, King Richard. In your opinion, how likely is it that silver will reach $100 per ounce in the next decade? Most likely. I never imagined that gold would fetch $3,600. Might be, possibly yes. Adrian, what are your thoughts? We can only pray that it does, can we? On the other hand, it makes us wonder how terrible it will be when silver costs $100 per ounce. Even if it's great for the stack, other things can end up costing you much more. Now let me tell you something about silver. Well, once it gets going, it broke out of that $30 per ounce pattern. Therefore, I believe it will keep moving up. There are, in fact, healthy setbacks occurring. However, it is progressing and continues to rise. And similar to gold, as we were discussing, it continues to reach new records daily. The price of silver has also been rising. It hasn't reached its all-time high just yet, but it's getting close. The possibility that we surpass 50 here over the next month or two is not out of the ordinary, my friend. The way we examine silver, Adrian raises a valid argument. You know, Harry, you can't buy silver with a stock exchange. A commodity it is. No CEO is safe from legal action. No advertising agency ever releases a subpar commercial. Every single quarterly report looks great. Because of its commodity status, it has a very hard time slowing down once it starts moving. To top it all off, silver will soon be in high demand due to its many industrial applications. This massive array of solar panels caught my eye on my way to work today. Wow, I wonder how much silver was in that. A lot of silver would be required for that type of array of panels if that trend were to catch on. However, as we discussed in an earlier video, there is a possibility that silver will replace rare earth metals in battery technology. There would be an enormous demand for silver in that case. That's in addition to the usual demand for stacking. Silver is currently experiencing a great deal of upward pressure. Furthermore, as Adrian pointed out, there is more than enough global unrest to sustain the upward trend in the price of gold and silver. You mentioned that we may ask you anything, Harry? Yes, be daring. This one, I'm not sure how edgy, but I thought it humorous. Where can I find a black tray similar to this one, they ask. You have the rounds and the coins. Indeed, I purchased them from Amazon. You may easily find what we call jeweler's trays. The price is reasonable, and you may buy the velvet pads and trays individually instead of in a package. The standard packaging for these is a case of 6 or 12, so keep that in mind when you place your order. Remember to add the velvet pads to your order as well. However, there are a number of reliable vendors on Amazon who offer these. Not very daring, that. Sorry, but no. Here, though, is a daring one. This one made me laugh. Okay, he had you ready. Consequently, they want to know which metal coin Harry dislikes the most. When I saw a state quarter for the first time, you had to have seen my face. I received one as spare change while shopping at a supermarket store. Now that I'm an adult, it happened in 1999. I was completely enthralled as I showed the cashier and the people behind me in line. But there are binder after binder and roll after roll of them, and I've grown to despise them because of it. On top of that, I'm mostly sick of it. Currently, I am completely over it.